everyone. Alright, in this video I'm going to show you beginning to end how to make this chunky cabled wrap. Now you can use it just as a wrap around your shoulders, put it over your head if you need to, just however you want to use it. Now the yarn that I use is the Red Heart. I lucked out and got it clearance. It is the Red Heart Grande Metallica. Metallic. I want to say Metallica. It's only 45 yards in one of these, so it actually takes 5 of these to make this wrap. So you definitely want to try to check the clearance bins for this. Now the information about the yarn is right here. If it will zoom, there it goes. So if you want to try to get a comparable yarn, of course the color is Wisteria. There we go. Now the loom that I used is the Knit Quick Chunky Loom Set. Knit Quick Chunky Loom Set. Got this from Michaels. Now the set comes with 2 looms. I used the larger purple one. It is a 20 peg loom, so the gauge is very, very large. Now the gauge and information is all in the video description down below, as well as a link to the PDF. It is a free PDF, so you can download the PDF from my Ravelry store for free, and it does go over everything on how to do this beginning to end. Before we can get started with this project, we have to set up our loom. Now you can use anything you want to mark these pegs. I will just show you what I used. Okay, so I am marking 3 different stitches on here, and everything empty is garter stitched through the entire project. Is basically how this works. To mark my pegs that I purl through the entire project, I use these. To mark the pegs that I flat stitched, well, E-wrap or flat stitch, whichever you want to do, through the entire project, I use these, which you only need 2. These are the Susan Bates bone rings. That's the smaller one. I got the larger one, so I knew that it would fit over the top of these pegs. And to mark my cable down the middle of the loom, I just used a rubber band right here. So, the PDF does have each, it tells you what to mark and what it's for, but I'll go over it real quick. So 1, 2, 3, peg 4 is marked, 5 and 6 are marked, peg 9 is marked, peg 10 and 11 have the rubber band, peg 12 is marked, 15, 16, and 17. So those are the pegs that are marked. Each one is marked for a different reason, which I will get into that a little bit more in a bit. Wow, this is heavy. Okay, so for our cast on, we are doing a chain cast on. Then we're going to purl a row, flat stitch a row, and purl a row. So let's get started with that. I've got a mad cat. Sorry, guys. I won't let him outside. Nope, Dexter. Okay, so I'm doing a chain cast on. So you create a slip knot. And you can go in whichever direction you want. You put it on the first peg. You take your working yarn, pull it through the loop. And then you have this loop, and then you have your string. You put both strands of the loop behind the next peg. Pull the working yarn through. Behind the next peg, pull the working yarn through. Do this all the way around. When you get to the last one, just sit the loop on it. That last peg, just put the loop on, and you're done. Now, you want both sides, let me show you this. You want both edges to match. So to do this, there's 2 things you're going to do. You will skip the first stitch of every row, and you will flat stitch the last stitch of every row. So I'm starting, my first row is a row of purl stitches. So I'm skipping this first peg, and I am going to purl the second one, which working yarn is below the loop. You pull it up through, Take the old off, put the new on. I'll show you this just a couple times. Oops. There we go. Holding this at a very awkward angle so that you guys could see it. Okay, so your first row you purl. Finish that row, I'll show you how to flat stitch. I stopped at that last peg to show you because I did this when I purled it. Now this one will be a flat stitch, which that's just a flat or U-stitch, whatever you're more comfortable with. I prefer the U-stitch. I have more of a stretch with it. You just hold the working yarn over and take it off. And see, you hold the working yarn over. It's so simple. It's kind of a shortcut to a knit stitch. So you do this all the way to the end and you flat stitch that last peg, and then you will skip the first peg, purl all the way back. Then I will show you how to do the design for the main part of the body. Okay, so I did my 3-row brim. I purled the first row, flat stitched the second row, purled the third row, and then I went ahead and did the next 2 rows. So you can kind of start to see how it's turning out. Now, one thing that's neat, if you want to add fringe to this project, see how the cast on, you have those loops right there. You can add fringe to it if you'd like. Okay, so I am on a flat stitch row where all the unmarked pegs are flat stitched. So I will go through the entire row and show you. So that one's flat stitched, this one's flat stitched. Of course, all these are, the directions are wrote out in the PDF, which is a free download that you can find in the video description. This one is a purl. It's very slippery to hold it like this. Okay, that's a flat stitch. It's flat stitched the entire time, except for your brim, of course. This is a purl. Okay, so sorry guys, it's very awkward. Okay, then we got flat stitch, purl. Let me set that down. These two have the rubber bands on them. That means you E-wrap both of those. These are the only pegs that you E-wrap, and this is where your cable is. So you E-wrap those two. You'll purl this one, flat stitch, purl, flat stitch, purl, flat stitch. Alright, finish this row out and I'll show you how to do your cable. Okay, so that design that you just did with the garter and the purls and the flat stitches. Oh, I'd help if I show you the right side of it. That is what creates this texture for the entire project. The only thing you need to change is every so often you will do a cable row. And I've added it up to where you either do it on your 9th row or your 10th row. So row 9 is going to be a cable row and row 19 will be a cable row. Of course, it's wrote out in the PDF, so you don't really have to worry about keeping track of it too much. You can just follow that. But how you do it is, the reason it's the 9th and the 19th row is because I always want it, I prefer to do my cables when I'm heading in the same direction. That way they look the same. If I do the cable coming back from the opposite direction, I can't get them to look exactly the same. That's the only reason I do this. So, what we do is, let me get a stitch holder. This will work. Just something to hold a stitch. Okay, so I'm going to take this off. I'm going to shove that through. Just to hold that on something. I'm going to E-wrap the second peg. Take it off. Move it to that first peg and tighten that stitch up. Then I'm going to grab this second stitch You might have to untwist it or stretch it. Just depends on how tight you pulled that first one. And then you E-wrap that. So essentially all you're doing is you are twisting these stitches. You're taking this one off, moving it to this peg, and moving that one to this peg. And then you just go right back into your design. Oh, I didn't grab the full yarn. One bad thing about the chunky yarn like this is you have to make sure you grab all the strands of it. There we go. So that's how you do it. I hope I explained this correctly. You finish this out to the size you want. I used 5 skeins of this yarn. The Red Heart Grande Metallics. Yeah, I got it on clearance. Let me see here. Wisteria is the color I used. And there's the lot number. So I used 5 of these to make my project as long as I wanted. You just get this as long as you want, and then you do your 3 rows. You do a row of purl, a row of flat stitch, a row of purl, and then I'll show you how to cast off. Alright, good luck guys. An optional step that you can do with this project before you do your cast off, your row of purl, row of flat stitch, row of purl, and then your cast off is, let me see if I can show you here. These pegs right here, there's 2 of them. This is what it looks like. You can actually drop that stitch and pick it up and make it thicker. See, it's a little more bold. It stands up a bit more. I will go ahead and show you that. You do not have to do this. This is completely optional. It'll still have that line. Let's see, here's where, because I don't want to drop it all the way down, but here's when it's picked up. This is normal. So what you do is you just take the stitch off the peg and then you drop it down, just like what I'm doing. And what I did was I dropped it all the way down right to my edge. See, there's a purl stitch, there's a knit stitch, there's a purl stitch. Dropped it all the way down there and grabbed the one stitch and pick them up. But let me get this dropped down and I will show you how you pick them up. Almost there. Okay, I can see it's starting to get thicker. Here we go. This is where I had it. But you would drop it all the way down to almost the bottom. You would grab 2 strands and you take them under. You grab the next 2. If you do one at a time, it's going to look exactly the same. Just doing 2 at a time just makes it bulkier. That's all it does. So it's just completely your preference. See, even if you want it even chunkier, you can do 3 at a time, but you gotta watch, because if you pick up too many at a time, it will make the fabric kind of pucker up. What you do is you just pick those up and see how that's raised now. I just like the texture of it. So you pick these up all the way up to the top one. If there's only 1 left, run it through the 1. If there's 2, run it through the 2 and then put them on the loop. Treat the 2 just like 1 stitch. Then you do a row of purl, a row of flat stitch, a row of purl, and then I will show you how to cast off. Okay, so I've got the stitches picked up, and then I did my purl row, flat stitch row, and purl row. Now for the cast off. I'm doing just a basic cast off, which what that means is you E-wrap 2, knit your bottom over the top, take your second peg, put it on your first, knit off, and move it over to the empty peg. So again, your step 1 is you E-wrap your first 2 pegs and knit off, Step 2, take the stitch from peg 2, that's your live stitch. Here's your working yarn. Move it to your first peg. Knit off. Step 3, you want to fill in the empty spot. So E-wrap. Alright, so E-wrap the 2, bottom over the top, second to the first, knit off, move over. Do this until you're on your last stitch, then you just cut the yarn and pull it through, but I'll show you. When you have your last 2, just E-wrap them both, bottoms over the top, move the second one back, bottom over the top, then you just take it off the loom, and see how handy these scissors are. No, they're stuck. You just cut it, pull it through, weave your ends in, and you are done.